We are rolling. Pavithra, how's it going?
All good, Shivam. How are
I
you?
I'm very well. I do appreciate you taking. It's pretty early, like it's around 8 in the morning on a Sunday. So I appreciate you taking the time out to speak.
No worries. Happy to. I'm usually actually a morning person, so it's not really such a big deal for me. I'm
Oh,
usually up and about most days by 7 a.m. So yeah.
by 7 a.m., man. I wish I was like that. I'm the exact opposite. I wake up at like 12 in the afternoon sometimes. Especially on a weekend, I'm definitely waking up at 12 in the afternoon, and then I'm going to work throughout the rest of the day if I have time. But that's most of my day. Yeah. So how did you get into design?
I think I've had a very like straight trajectory. I used to, like I say, I used to, when I was a younger person, when I was younger, I said I used to want to be a maker, and people used to be like, what does it mean to be a maker? And I'm like, I just like to make. I was always interested in like clay or like crafts and drawing and things. But over a period of time, I started realizing that I wanted to draw more, and that's actually my inherent interest. Um, and then I decided that I would like to become a creative sort of designer situation. And then I went to art school and I interned at like a few places. And then I realized that I tried my hand at a few things before I came to branding specifically.
Hmm.
But I would say that I always knew I was going to like become a designer at some fashion or the other. I have pretty straight trajectory. I've never really wavered. Sometimes I'd be like, okay, would I like to also write, or would I like to also
Yeah.
do theater, or would I also like to do something? But largely it's been focused on this idea that I want to create and make stuff, and design was probably one of my favorite ways of doing it. Yes.
So when people say design, what is
Hmm.
design exactly?
Uh, Actually, it's a great
Yeah.
question because I feel, at least in India, design has been largely over-indexed on fashion.
Hmm.
If not fashion, then it's about like, I would say, architecture, interior design. Those are usually the most famous. Um, what I do is probably a little more, con- I would say, a very small section. What I specifically work on is graphic design. It's like saying design is like an overarching career, like saying, oh, I'm an engineer, but I mean, what specifically are you doing?
Right.
So you could study different kinds of, like say design, like I said, like fashion design or interiors, architecture. You could be a graphic designer or
Yeah.
an advertising, etc. You could have further subspecializations in any of these.
Mm-hmm.
You could even study product design, and then product design also has specifications. So you could actually build physical products like a chair or a table, or
Hmm.
you could build like interface products, which are sort of like what we use right now. So like your apps and UX designers, or you could even build like industrial design. So like
Hmm.
the structure of an iPhone or a iPad or an Apple Watch or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
All of those are like industrial designers, and or material. So all these people also then specifically start to become even like material, using like sustainable materials and biodegradables, and I mean all of that's part of. So there are subsections within everything. So I would say I studied design, and in a sense that I studied graphic design.
Yeah.
And I sort of when I was studying, my sort of specialty subject was typography, which is the usage of letter forms,
Oh.
and how do you sort of master it. Yeah, there are specifically typeface designers, which is a subsection specialization if you'd like to do it. I haven't, but I do have a lot of friends who are basically people who build out typefaces. And I mean, it's great in a country like India because we have so many languages, and all
Yeah.
of these don't actually have the amount of. I mean, English obviously has. I mean, you have a million typefaces in English, but it's beyond that. Like it's the regional spaces. Like everybody needs it. Everything from like the government to
That
newspapers to
that must be
uh,
incredibly
you
hard.
know,
Sorry to interrupt there, but it must be
yeah.
incredibly hard to design a typeface.
It is. I mean, I have always wanted to, but I haven't gotten around to it. But hopefully, in this lifetime, I hope I could do one. I think it's I don't know about the tedious or hard bit, but I think it's very intensive in a sense that you have to wake up and it's a small, minute thing that you have to do. There are some really, really good I would say, type of designers that we have globally
Yeah.
as well as like in India, I would say like Sarang Kulkarni, Shivanala Perumal, Pooja Saxena,
Hmm.
Kalapi. These are some of the sort of names that I would recognize instantly because they're also happening hobby friends of mine, of course. And Kimia and all these people are like really doing a great job. Like they're also doing a lot of regional languages and you know trying to get options. So the thing is that we're largely, I mean, we try. I mean, a lot of what I do is also designing for a 5% audience of this country. I would say we're still 95% not. People don't actually. People do understand English, but you can. I mean, they would recognize a typeface. Like for
Hmm.
example, the new V, like Vodafone Idea became V,
Hmm.
and then imagine how V is written in all the languages in the world. I mean, in the country,
Yeah.
like has to be transcribed into like Hindi, Marathi, like Devanagari, Tamil, Kannada, Telugu,
Yeah.
Gurmukhi. So you need custom word marks for all of
Yeah.
them. If you need to make advertising in all those languages, then you need the typeface sets for all of
Hmm.
them. So these are the kind of stuff that people do, and it's very good because for a country that has so many different languages, we do actually need the sort of skill
Yeah.
sets or understanding that it's very important,
Yeah.
and people don't recognize it as important, but there are like
Definitely.
specialists in the field.
I feel like
Yeah,
over
that's
over the past couple of years or so, I've seen so many instances of the Devanagari script on more digital platforms than ever before. I've never seen it. So like I'd see it on Twitter, I'd see it on Instagram, I'd
yes,
see YouTube. Like YouTube videos now have Devanagari scripts as titles. So in that sense,
yeah,
it's
that's
definitely getting more inclusive.
yeah. Also because I mean they realize that there's like a large part of India's market that's still
Yeah.
untapped. I mean, like I said, like we would be one of the 5-7% of this country. So, I mean the market or the understanding of the actual public is much more like bilingual, if not multilingual. I
Wow.
mean, at least two languages. Most people would be in Hindi, but but the thing is, India is such a large
Yeah.
country, and I mean, the south is so different from the middle, is so
Mhm.
different from the east, is so different from the north, and there's no way to tie it all
Yeah.
together. So when you think of a market, you have to become
That's
multilingual. I
crazy.
mean, we encourage even when we do branding, and
Yeah.
I mean, I work for a company Lando and
Hmm.
Fitch in India. And when we do branding, I mean simple brands. I mean think of a brand like Domino's,
Hmm.
and you have to like sort of have Domino's in it. I mean Domino's is going to be everywhere
Yeah.
from a city like Lucknow, Indore, or like smaller sort of towns in rural Chennai and parts of this country. And Domino's wants to expand everywhere. I
Yeah.
think they want obviously that's more for them. Then you need to start having regional. The regional identity becomes like equally or more important. It has to have equal status.
Yeah.
I mean, also we have a government rule, right? Like, I mean, at least in like Maharashtra, it's like I think it's 20% of the identity on a signage that has to be in a regional language. But in like Karnataka and I think in one or two other states, that ratio is flipped. It's 50-50%. In some cases, 80% regional language
Yeah.
and
And some
20%
and some
English.
people won't even understand. Like, fine, your audience is going to get it if you're in a Mumbai or Pune, but if you're in rural Kerala,
Yeah.
even though everyone is educated, they may not be educated in English. So you'd have to. But
Yes.
does this
Yeah.
same principle apply to graphics? So, like when you're designing a symbol, right? Do
Hmm.
you think about how universal a symbol is? Or do you think about how regions or groups of people interpret a symbol?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I mean, okay, so what I don't necessarily design symbols per se, but I would say that a logo is in the end a symbol. So like
Yes.
it has to be universal. It can't have like negative connotations or sexual connotations or racist connotations. Like, for example, even though the sort of swastika in India is, like a holy, like sort of like we draw it all the time, and it's acceptable, but you can't use it on a global level because it's equivalent to a Nazi sort of symbol.
Yeah.
So you need to understand, like, so when you work on global brands, I mean, I work for a global company wherein like about 50 countries in the world, and when you think of that scale, then we also have like questionnaires that go out. So we send it out to people and be like, does this have any sort of negative conflict in your country, because it's a global brand? I mean, for the example, like if you're going to be launching like a telecom brand, a global telecom brand, or like you're going to be launching, then you need to understand, or like if you're going to be launching an oil and gas company, or then you can't. I mean, BP is a great example. At the end of the day, they have like this whole green flower. It's a positive looking symbol, but then they're also trying to, like, I mean, it was branded 20 years ago, but things like that. But if something has a negative connotation, I mean, simpler things like a Star of David, or like the 6-pointed star, 8-pointed star, like these have in some places positive connotations, in some places not necessarily positive connotations. So when you're using them, you need to know as a designer. So it's always good to check with. So we usually have surveys that go around in different offices too. So it is important, especially more than ever now, because as a world, I mean, with 2020 has been a great year for that, like inclusivity or like understanding and trying to get everybody on the same sort of starting ground has been pretty much challenging, especially from a design or like, people standpoint, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. There are a few things about this past year or so which have been very, very enlightening for me. There are a few concepts that even I've learned of, which was like pretty big. One
100%.
One of those was universal design. So I knew about making things accessible for all, and that whole system of making stuff which is accessible for all. But I recently learned something called universal design, which is like not like if you're making a space, it's not just people who may have some kind of disability that would be accessing the space. There's going to be kids, pregnant women, all kinds of people, different people of different sizes, tall, small, different requirements, different proclivities, and to design a space with that in mind is something which a lot of people nowadays call universal design, and they have like a symbol for it and everything. And I was really surprised.
I mean, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, urban planners actually use this a lot, and architects and interior designers. I feel like in India we're still not, I would say, as we're still getting there. But I mean, even in like 2020, there's more conversation in the field of design. And I mean, I say this to people, design is actually a privileged career. I mean, you can't, I mean, it's not a career where you can instantly be like I mean, you have to acknowledge privilege. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not very easy. It's not a very well paid career. Like in finances, like there's a lot that you would have to consider. So if it's not an easy, and there's a lot of like investment to sort of become a designer. So like when you're coming from that background, it's very hard to remember that you may have disability, or like I said, like is it enough for elderly people? Is it enough for children? Is how does like regional, like sort of like uneducated person? Is it intuitive? Can I move from one to another? So these are things that even we're learning as we go along, and it's pretty tough because if you don't come from that background, it's very hard to if you haven't lived that experience, like we say. But if you have empathy and you sort of work, and that's why, I mean, I guess in experience design, which is the future as we call it, we have to consider these things. You have to like there's a feedback loop. You design something, but design is always work in progress. There's nothing called finished design because 6 months from now something has evolved, and design needs to keep adapting, and even brands need to constantly keep moving and learning and changing, because what's relevant today may not be relevant 5 7
Yeah,
years
man.
from now. I tell this to even
Yeah.
designers, and like even like I have nieces and nephews who are like starting college, and uh, this is my standard advice to most people. You can't plan for the future.
Yeah, man.
Technology is changing at an insane pace.
Yeah.
I mean, there's every day new programs, new things that you're learning. I mean,
It's
it's
crazy.
impossible. Like I had never thought like AR, augmented reality, virtual reality. These
Ooh.
are things that we design to every single day.
Yeah.
Or like, can and experience. I mean, who would have thought that as a global level that we would be 100% work from home for like a
Oh,
few
nobody
months
did.
for
I
a
don't think
year.
anybody thought
And
that we were going to be working from home. And it's crazy because there are like, I have found two camps here. One group of people like, screw it, let's just all stay at home. Why are we even going to work? Like, what's the point? And there's another group of people saying, I want to go back to work. Everyone's like, no, get me back. I can't take this anymore. And then there's like these two camps. But one thing which I have noticed is that a lot of people are getting okay with the idea of working from home, especially because um, I mean, just in the lines of, since we're talking about design, I think that it also allows people to kind of create the place, the environment that works for them. And I don't know if you're on Reddit, but if you're in design, I'm sure you're on Reddit. And they have a lot of these setups, rate my setups, and things like that. These YouTubers are doing it. Everyone's doing it, where they're like kind of doing these transformation videos or setups. And you can see a lot of these office setups, and they're really cool to see. They have like standing desks. They have like four monitors. It's beautiful to see, and I think people are getting really comfortable now with their internal home space. Very much so.
yes, yes, of course. I mean, I think again, it's a matter of how you look at it. Like in design, I mean, for some people, it's easier. I would say if you're younger, single, one of those kind of things, yes. If you are, if you have kids in the house, I think it's infinitely harder to draw
Yeah,
boundaries. I think for mothers, I would acknowledge
yeah,
that. I mean, I deeply admire all the mothers who are doing work from home. I think it's
yeah.
incredible. I know some people, and I'm just like, it must be exhausting. But I mean, I think you have to go to them. I mean, I think it's easier on some people, tougher on some,
Yeah,
and I don't think there's a one size fits all solution. But I mean, like I just said, right? Like the world is changing at such a rapid pace. I mean, uh, let's hope. I think people have settled into working from home a lot more smoothly than they have ever before. Not
yeah,
that I'm saying there's anything right or wrong about it. Maybe the future is 80% work from home, 20% office, so that people who genuinely can't work from home. In India, we also have like functional problems like internet, bandwidth, is this actually like electricity issues?
I,
Basic
I.
functionalities are also still challenging in a lot of places. So,
So my dad runs a business back home in Mumbai, and he's moved everything to the cloud. And he's an old chap. He's around 60 years old. Like he's been around for the longest time, and he's been like a brick and mortar guy for the longest time. But he's like,
yeah,
I'm
I
moving
can.
everything to the cloud now, and I'm getting his staff. Okay, who I always thought that they're very nice people, but they're not very technologically savvy. So he's like, no, but my staff is also working. So I think they're figuring things out. The biggest problem, in my opinion,
Yeah.
and people are still trying to work around this, there's no trust, right? And so I'm not going to, like, it's very hard for bosses to trust that the people that are working for them are getting the work done. And the second thing, which is really weird, but it's if there's a group of five people, so if you have a group of like a team of five people, if one of your colleagues decides to go in for work regularly, everyone's going to have to do that, especially if it's a competitive environment where people are looking for raises. If one person's going in to work and their boss is there, or the rest of the team is there, it's going to be very difficult for the other four people to justify staying at home. So there is definitely a kind of a peer pressure to go to work.
I mean, it actually, I mean, I would, this is a contentious subject,
Go
but
for it.
I think it would depend on the manager. I think it would depend on, like, if you're going to hold on to like HR processes, which are like old school and, metrics on, are you showing up to work? Are you doing enough things? Are you available to me? Are you like top of mind?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that it's a given, but I do think that, uh, everybody should be given equal playing ground. But of course, I'm talking in an utopia. But if you're a good manager, I think it's possible. Or if you have a good manager, it's possible to like work from home, and even if people are going to office, you still get the same kind of thing. But I mean, I guess it depends. There's
How would
no
you
like
design
one
around
set.
this problem?
I think there are processes. I mean, irrespective of somebody who's going into work or not going into work, or in location or not in location, I think it's possible to figure out a solution where, you know, uh, as long as it's open dialogue.
Yeah.
I think there's like, it can't be like, I'm going to have a once in a year review. That process is like dead on arrival
Oh
right
yeah.
now. I would say it should be more like healthy conversations that happen every month, and you're given a chance to prove your worth, uh, whether it's online or in person or whatever. What are the projects I've done? How am I improving? What are my new KRAs? Can I do something else? Can I? There has to be active participation on both ends.
Yeah.
The thing is that you could be remote in like Timbuktu for all I care, but then if there is intent that I would like to do more and you ask for it, I think most people would be open to it. I mean, but like I said, it depends on how the manager looks at it,
Yeah.
rather than, the employee can do a lot. But if your managerial processes are like old school and you have like once a year review and once a year bonus or whatever I think some of those processes need to be
Oh,
rethought out in
definitely they
like
need
the
to be.
future. Yeah,
And there are a lot
I
of
would say
people
that.
who are doing that. There are these engagement firms that are working with employee engagement firms that are using a combination of gamification and uh, employee appraisal.
Interesting.
So what I was recently speaking to a company there. So what they do is they essentially have a one-stop shop for everything that you want to do when you're kind of working with others. So like say for instance you and I are working together on a project. Though that project has a predetermined goal which you can obviously see on the software. But additionally what it also allows you to do is I can give you points if you if you were helpful to me.
Interesting.
Right. Now,
okay.
So the thing is that the way it's gamified, and that's what I told them. I said the challenge would be what would you attribute those points? Like what are those points worth? You can't have money,
Correct.
right? Because people will obviously game the system. If both of us can like praise each other in terms of money, we'll just do it for each other without any stopping, right? We'll just give each other money if we could. But if you are the same team, but it still can't be nothing. So that's where I think gamification comes in, where they have to decide what the right level of kind of enforcing each other's behavior on a common platform would be. And it sounds
complicated, but let's see.
Yeah, it sounds weird, but people are still like, there are people who are trying to do this, and which is at least better than our alternative.
Yeah.
See, it seems to me that you're an extremely creative individual who works in a corporate kind of setting, right? So it's like a result oriented setting. So it seems like a lot of the stuff, like the creative process is forwards, right? You're kind of you're trying to figure out what's going to happen. You're trying to create, which is always forwards. You can't create backwards. But a corporate process is backwards. So you have like, they'll tell you, we want you to submit this in the next week. So how do you kind of fine tune that? Where do you let those two things meet?
Because I disagree with both definitions.
Okay.
So that's a completely
Go for it. Please do.
I think a lot of people think creativity is it's like a, how do I say it? It's, to me, it's a honed skill.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to like. It is not like I'm creative today, I will not be creative tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it is also that I have to show up every day or every hour, and sometimes the work is not creative.
Mm.
It is not, you can't always be creative. Like, you can't just be making the next path breaking idea. I'm not making a patent, I'm not a scientist. I am going to create from nothing. I'm making something which is great. But that process is, but then to bring it to life is just making. After that idea comes, to bring it to life is, you're not creating new stuff all the time.
Correct.
So I feel like creativity is best done with some sort of framework, or like, if you give a designer or a creative person an open canvas, they will have nowhere to start.
Yeah.
Usually, if there are some sort of boundaries or some sort of framework, like you tell me that, okay, you have 3 hours to do something, there is a better output, or like there is like a what do you call, restrictive set of things that you can do, or it can only be black and white, or the fact that it has to work at like 20 mm size, or the fact that it can only be printed in a certain fashion, or it can be on a digital. Those restrictions allow for better output. If there is like an open canvas, it's very hard to begin. So for most creative people, a certain sense of canvas, or it could be self-built. You could invent it in your own hand.
Yeah.
In a corporate practice, somebody gives it to you. That's the only difference. But that usually helps. I feel like that's the difference between somebody who designs and somebody who creates art. Art has no boundaries, and art has no specifications, and you could just paint because you feel like painting, but that does not have any business or commercial value.
Yeah.
Like, in a sense that, paintings do sell eventually and you become famous and all of that, but it doesn't, it's not an inherent, like, somebody can buy it for a certain price all the time. Like, it's not like if you paint for a certain value today, that value is consistently going to stay
And
the
neither
same.
is it a service, right? You're offering a service. You're offering something which is a reliable service. I'm not going to go to an artist and say, hey man, I trust you, the next thing you're making, I'm going to buy it, unless you're like an MF Hussain or someone. I'm still going to see the product and buy it. But when I'm going to you, I'm going to your brand, I'm going to say, hey, guys, listen, just make me this. And it's got to be a standard at a certain level.
Yeah, correct. I totally 100% agree with that. I feel like it's a service design experience, and you're always in this, like, what do you call, you're designing for a service business, and it's always, pretty spectacular from that angle. That the fact that you are, it's not just random, basically. And, it's not a it's like, I think there is a, sort of famous sort of quote that it said, is like, design is it's not a form of art, but it's a function of business. It's a service and not an end in itself. And I think that's what's important, that most people need to remember, that design is always in the service of the business. Like, what is the end output? What is the business impact? You can't design without, I mean, that's what we tell people as well. You have a responsibility as a designer. I mean, also, like, there's a very famous Netflix show called Abstract that really talks about, like, I think there are 2 seasons that are done, and there are designers in every season, and they, like I said, so you have like a product designer, or a graphic designer, or a lighting designer, experiential designer. There are different people who are doing different things. And in the second season, one of the shows called Ian Spalter, he's the head of design of Instagram, and he designed the new app experience, and he defined infinite scroll. And that has fundamentally changed how you use a product or a program. And that comes with a responsibility, right? Like the fact that people are going to spend that many hours. Same with Netflix.
I don't think these people have designed it with any responsibility in mind, man. They've absolutely they've got ballistic with it. It's terrible.
Of course. The thing is that I mean, think about it. They're designing it for so that you consume more, you spend more hours. That's their business metric. It's not a responsibility that they need to think about. They make money with how much time you spend on their app. So it's a
That's yeah.
business metric. It works fine for them. I mean, this
That's
is not
for
an ethics way. It's not, are not designing for ethics at any point. So, yeah.
I think I also think that there's a trade-off because there's shit which is on like that people can get in the short run. There's stuff that can happen in the long run. For
Yes.
example, I know that these apps are using my information very, very violently. Like I'm not using that word very lightly. I know these guys are using my data very violently. For example, if you go into your Facebook account and check in your settings and look at the categories of things that they've put you in. So what these algorithms really do is they track everything that you do. I'm sure you've at least heard of the social media on Netflix if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
social dilemma. But
Dilemma. Yeah.
and you can actually see that in action if you go to your Facebook account privacy or whatever. You can basically see what categories they've put you in. And what
Yeah.
they've essentially done is they've gone ahead and put you in categories um, based on your previous scrolling activity. I looked at the categories I was put in. I didn't even know I was in those categories. I was like, holy shit! Like, and there are hundreds of categories like or boxes they put you in. So the why those categories matter is the next time they want to advertise to you, right?
Hmm.
They're going to give advertisers that category and you're placed there. And that's like a direct line. And some of these things are like so unethical. But at the same time, you have companies like Apple do it. And Apple is not 100% ethical, I understand. But some of the stuff that they do with privacy is also amazing.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that they do with user experience as well is just, it blows my mind how they do it. There's
Yeah.
these, they can get, they get the most intuitive kind of, they make the most intuitive changes to their products. Like, for example, I don't know if you've tried or you've seen their widgets.
I have. I
Yeah.
do. I use all Apple.
So if I figured as much, but if you add a widget to your screen, have you seen that little
Yeah.
ripple effect that it does?
Yes.
That's so satisfying. Nobody's thought of doing that. Why have they done that? It's crazy, but the fact that they thought of doing that is so amazing.
I think like a lot of like experience design is also what it does. I mean, I feel like private. I don't actually use that much social media. I will be honest. I
Yeah.
sort of read a book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. I
Mm-hmm.
recommend everybody to do it if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't read it. It's an incredible book. And he basically talks about this idea of how many distractions you have. So I kind of quit most social media.
Yeah.
I do have a Facebook account. I don't actively use it. I think I haven't opened it in the next few months.
Yeah.
I don't have the app on my phone. It's not automatically logged in. And every time I want to use it, I use it in my browser. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Tumblr. I'm not on Reddit. I do not actively use most platforms because I think that everything occupies too much mind space. And I'm very particular about who I give my mind space to.
Right.
So I'm very I'm also probably one of the only few people in this world in our age group, I would say, who does not own a Netflix account, has never used it. I do not watch. Yeah, because I just don't. I mean, I also have very low attention span for moving media.
Yeah.
I mean, I can enjoy a film in a theater, but I think that's what, like, I don't want to make a project life out of it. I don't think I could ever binge watch anything. It used to be more fun in the older days. I think I have watched like shows like The House or, How I Met Your Mother. That was fun then. I don't think I feel like it has become so intense. Like when I see all these shows and people constantly talk about it, I'm just like, it's consuming your life.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of it?
Yeah.
And I don't want to give anything that much kind of control of mine. But I'm a much more slower person. I read.
Yeah.
I read a lot. average about like 40 books a
Nice.
year. On good years, I have 60 plus books,
Nice.
and bad years, like I would say 2020, I would say I would average about 30 books or
Mm.
something, 25, 30. But it's like uh, most years I get about 40 in no matter what I do. And I feel like that's a control that I have. It's not like, it's not based on whatever somebody thinks I should read. It's based on my research
Do you
or
read it, or
some
read it, or do you like do some, like, do you listen to it? You
read,
read it.
read.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually
So I own between Kindle and hardcover book, or like hardcover and a
nice.
physical print
Nice.
copy, but it's a between both.
Oh man.
I think that reading has really enriched or
Mm.
helped me slow down life, because when you're reading, you cannot multitask.
Oh
Like unlike any other, like a call, or you're always doing
yeah.
five things. Reading is just
Yeah.
reading. You can't do anything else. And I think I use it as
Oh
downtime. Most people who know me, I mean, it's in a way like it's therapeutic. I also cook a lot.
right.
I didn't embrace cooking. I used to think it was kind of like really messed up before, but now I do cook a lot,
Hmm.
and I think that it's another thing that you can't multitask. And maybe you can still talk and cook, but it's very
Yeah.
hard to do everything else.
I
So,
actually do all those things, and I multitask through every one of those things that you just mentioned.
oh my God, how?
So
What? Yeah.
I've been telling my roommate about this, and, like, and my friends as well. What I do is I listen to. So there's this service which has recently started in the States, and now I think it's going to start in Canada and other countries as well. But it's basically Audible Plus. So Audible has, like, it gives you a credit a month, which you can get a book for. But now they have a certain collection which is just completely unlimited. So what I do is while I'm working out, so it takes like me to get to the gym, get back, and work out is like 90 minutes. Me cooking every day is like 15 minutes, so like an hour, because I'm making 4 meals at least a day. I mean, like, basically walking around and everything. Every time I'm walking around, I have an audiobook running. So I actually managed to get through like a lot of books every week. I'm multitasking as I'm doing that. And there's also audio playing. But here's the thing, here's what it leaves me with. A little bit of, like, I feel like I don't have ADD. I don't want to misdiagnose myself. But I definitely have, the reason why this works for me so well is because I have a huge issue paying attention to something for a very long time. And
Same. I do too.
this really does work
It's a
well.
it's a byproduct of our generation. I mean, I don't think it's
Yeah.
any of us largely have, but I do think that I am most effective when I'm doing five
Yeah.
things, and I rarely like to give my attention to one thing as
Yeah.
well. But there are a few things that I cannot multitask with. When I'm reading, I can't multitask
Yeah.
because I feel like I want to absorb as much as I can. I have never got into this world of audiobooks because I don't think I have the mental attention span to be
Mm.
listening to something,
Yeah.
focusing on it, and even doing a menial task like washing utensils. Like it just hasn't
Right.
happened to me. So I prefer reading for
Yeah.
reading. Like when I'm reading, I'm only reading. The other thing is when I'm designing, I'm
Yeah.
only designing. Like I can't multitask even when I'm designing.
Yeah.
Like even like there are some days when I actually need absolute focus. So I think the fan is noisy. So I sit in a room alone with no fan, no sound, nothing. I just want to be able to think.
Oh.
Like I should be able to hear my own like thoughts or
Mhm.
brain. But that level of, because that's what I call deep work. Because the problem if you read Cal Newport's deep work is that it's the antithesis of this. That you can multitask as a way, but it's not necessarily, you're not, because you're not giving 100% of yourself to anything, the output is never going to be 100%.
Yeah.
And like some of the greatest pieces of work actually come from 100% of attention or whatever it is. And that's the beauty of it. Like I feel like that's what's fun.
Yeah. Actually, I've been meaning. So I had a look at Deep Work. I saw some of the reviews, and they weren't nice. But I've heard at least like a lot of people recommend it. So I think that's going to be my next one. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Especially,
I mean, that, and I would say there's a book called Atomic Habits, if you haven't
I've
read
read,
it, by James Clear. Well,
read.
yeah. I think those are two books that I absolutely swear by in terms of like, I 100% believe in compound interest as a way of life. I don't think it's one way or another.
Right.
My whole life is a principle or an outcome of that. I don't think change can happen overnight, or like anything can happen overnight. Even building a project in a creative career, or like it's compounding interest. Like if I read, say, 20, 40, even if you read 5 books a year, after 5 years, you read 25 books.
Yeah.
That's more than reading.
Yeah.
Or like, for example, even if you play a sport once a week, in 52 weeks, you've played it 52 times, which is more than never having played ever. So the thing is that if you play every day for a week and then give up and never play for a whole year, you've only played 7 days. But then if you play once a week, then it's 52 weeks. So it's compound interest is more important in, like, for me. It's like Atomic Habits, like, made a lot of sense from that
100%.
Even projects in my world.
100%, man.
Even creativity, I mean, a lot of people say this, and I say this is the same thing. I said it's a habit. It's not, you have to show up every single day, and you have to be able to give something. It may not be 100%, which is fine, because it's impossible to be 100% amazing every single day. But showing up and putting in the hours and putting in the work every single day or every week is more important, and compounds to something much larger than if you didn't even start or try.
Absolutely. There have been this happens a lot to me when I'm working out. There have been some times where I just do not want to, so I'm doing this program where it's 3 times a week I'm doing squats. And if you're doing squats 3 times a week on Monday, on Wednesday, and on Friday, after a while it's like, why am I doing squats? Like, what is my life? Like, is this what it is? Is this what it's come down to? And that's when, just saying, hey, you know what? I'm just going to show my face at the gym. I'm just going to let people see me, and then let's see what happens. And then just reducing the stakes a little bit definitely does help. And recently I discovered this very interesting technique. I've seen this on YouTube. Like, if you go through YouTube, there are these group of people who come up with these. It's fascinating. They call study with me's. So it's essentially people recording themselves studying with a timer on the top right. And what it does is, like, people who are going through, like, who are studying or who are in the pandemic and alone, they kind of put that window up on the corner as they're studying. So it almost feels like you are studying with someone. So it seems weird. And they're like 8 hours, 9 hours, 10-hour long videos of people just studying. And they have like a lot of engagement on YouTube. So there's these small videos, but what I learned was that on those videos, they have these 25-minute timers. So apparently, and I've been doing this from the past 2 weeks, they're really working. They're called Pomodoro timers. So you work for 25 minutes, you pick a task, you work on it for 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. And then you work on, and it's just one task. You can't, you're not multitasking, but you're basically doing one task. You're doing it for 25 minutes, then you're taking 5 minutes off. Then you're doing it for 25 minutes, and you're taking 5 minutes off. Till you finish the task, or till you finished 4 cycles, then you take a break, a longer break. And that's been super helpful, especially in terms of giving me structure. With reference to the
I think that's what I was going to say. A lot of people think that design and creativity has no structure, but I beg to differ. I feel like the best pieces come from structure.
Right.
Structure is very, very important. Yeah.
Do you have and is that like a universal across the industry? Like, does everyone like to work with structure, or like?
People think that structure is not for them, but I feel like structure brings out the best in people. To me, I think. I mean, all the example or pieces that I have seen, I would say that.
Right. Yeah. That's very interesting, because I work with a lot of different groups of people from different backgrounds. And I've noticed that, like, essentially creativity has its own, like, people have their own preference for creativity. And, like, for example, one of my friends who's an actor, Rohit, he's always going to tell me, like, creativity has no bounds. I'll be like, hey man, I'll be like, dude, I just saw one of your plays. It made no sense to me, because it didn't. There were people doing repetitive motions for 45 minutes. Nikhil saw that play. You can ask him about it. So he basically, there was like, I was a play and there were people just making these random noises, walking across the stage, like
Hmm.
doing their own thing, jumping around. And I asked him, I said, "Hey Rohit, can you please tell me what this play meant? Like, what is the meaning of this play?" He's like, "Hey man, it
Hmm.
meant whatever you wanted to mean." And I was like,
That's art. That's what I say.
yeah,
This is
that's
not.
that's very
It's not
forwards.
design. It's not a function of.
Yeah. So do you have
Yeah.
like guys like that in the industry as well?
I mean,
You
I'm
have you
sure
have
they
have you
exist.
worked with
Not
someone?
like.
Have you found it like never? Oh man, that's some crazy stuff.
Very tough.
What?
I also think I also think when you're in the service design business, it's impossible to find people who are just like, oh, I'm going to feel it. That's not- There's really no, like, you just need to be like moving and, yeah, I don't know how to explain it. Okay.
Yeah. And what does mastery look like to you?
I feel like it's a skill that you need to hone in every day. I mean, you can't become a master of like 10 things, like they say, jack of all trades, master of none. Mastery literally requires you to show up every single day. I mean, a great example of that would be, I think, look at any of these famous artists. You take Vincent van Gogh or like Picasso or Francis Newton D'Souza in India or Amrita Shergill. Uh, these guys or A. Ramachandran. There are so many of them. I mean, they show up every single day. I mean, think about it. Like, there is nothing that Van Gogh got. If you read his
Hmm.
biography, there's nothing he got out of fame. I mean, he would just do it because he wanted to do it, and he couldn't explain this need to anybody. And that's literally what mastery is. You show up every day. It doesn't matter who's watching. I mean, it's the same with people, sort of like athletes. There was a really nice Under Armour film of Michael Phelps. It's what you do with the back. It's what you do uh, when the lights are off or background is what shows
Yeah.
up. It's like you get 15 seconds of fame on the Olympic stage, or like 5 minutes or
Hmm.
10 minutes, but it's the 4 years of preparing for that 5 minutes is what that nobody sees, right? Like nobody ends
Yeah.
up seeing any of these athletes
Yeah.
behind. But that's mastery. I mean, think about it. I mean, Michael Phelps has been swimming since he was like in his like he was a
Since he was, I
baby,
think, six or
and
7 years old.
it's the same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, exactly, right? Like he was a baby, 7, 8 years old, and he's been swimming every day
Yeah.
for so many hours. I mean, how is that? I mean, think about it. What is changing in his skill set? Nothing. Like the fact that he just puts in the hours and it's compound interest.
Yeah.
That's what I keep telling people.
Also,
It's
he
like
will.
you show up and consistent. I mean, I'm not saying he's
Yeah.
not talented, and I'm not saying he has a body. All of those things have worked in favor for him. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that. But the point is that he doesn't take that for granted. He shows up everything. You could be great, but if you don't have discipline, consistency, and you do not show up, it's impossible to become a master.
You know.
Mastery of a skill, you to come up every day on days you do not want to come up, including I
Oh
don't want
man.
to wake up, but you wake up.
Yeah.
I don't
I
want to
think.
work out, but it's like even losing weight is the same thing, or like becoming healthy. It's people just like, oh, I'm not losing any weight, I'm not becoming healthy. I'm like, yeah, but you're not. I mean, yeah, but I tried to diet for a week. I'm like, let's talk after you dieted or you've been eating healthy for a whole year or 2 years or 3 years, and let's talk about it. It doesn't happen overnight. People think that change is overnight, but it's actually
Yeah.
a result of compound interest.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing, I was just speaking to some of my friends about this uh, today, and one thing which really worked for me is I've been doing this for a month, at least 2 months actually now. Is every day just find one thing in my environment, because I'm mostly at home now.
Yes.
Find one thing in my environment to improve it, and just like make that a habit. So if it's so because I'm living by myself, because I'm at home, there's no need for me to make my bed. Just a simple thing, like make my bed. I would start making that. What I found was that over a period of time, like I think 1 month into it, I began, like, once I've improved everything that I could improve around me, I began to improve the abstract things around me. So I would get to inbox zero, and I would make sure that everything, all the communications that I had to make was done. Once I did that, then I was like, okay, fine. Then I would make sure that all the things that I had to do in the day were done. So
mm,
it's like I started with a simple action, which was just cleaning, making sure that my bed was made. That's all. But the spirit there was obviously do one good thing, like one new thing or one thing to improve, like at a time, step by step.
yeah.
And that kind of snowballed into something definitely very large. Now there's
I
that.
think that's always good, but I also don't subscribe to productivity as a metaphor. So,
What does that mean?
I mean, like in a sense that I feel like a lot of people subscribe to this idea that if you have free time, you need to be productive or you want to constantly improve. I'm totally in for the growth mentality, but I'm not necessarily into for the productive mentality. Like, so for example, I usually, like, if I have free time, I usually read, but
Mm-hmm.
then there are days I just want to stare at the fan. And if I think
Oh,
that's good, then that's good. Because I don't subscribe to productivity as a metaphor. I'm okay with not being productive. I'm okay with not doing anything. I just want to be present. I just don't want to do anything. And if that means that's the price, like yesterday was one of those days. I think I woke up and I spent 4 hours just not getting out of my bed. And I
mm-hmm.
was okay with it. Like, I don't think I was depressed or I was upset. I just didn't feel like doing anything I had to do. And I was okay with it. I think, like, as a as the world goes right now, we spend way too much time trying to fill all our waking hours with being productive, improving something, lifestyle. I don't subscribe to that. I used to be like that before, but I don't subscribe to that notion that much anymore. There's a
Right.
great book called How to Do Nothing. You should read it.
How to do nothing. Yeah, I've I think I was in I think I was around 22 or 23 when one of my mentors gave me a book called An Ode to Being Idle by, I forget his name.
Yeah,
Russell Brand. I think no, sorry,
that's Ibrahim. Yeah.
Not Russell Brand. Russell,
Wait.
the philosopher, Russell something. So I'm not sure what his name
Hmm,
is, but I
hmm,
don't want to say Russell Peters, but
hmm,
but anyway, I think there's a lot of merit in just being. Sometimes
hmm,
sometimes my mind doesn't allow it as well. Like, supposing if it's been a week, like yesterday,
hmm,
I that thing that you mentioned about binge watching really hit home because uh, I think Mirzapur was released on Thursday, and it's
hmm.
been like a few months I haven't watched like a show. I watch while I eat, or I watch when I'm winding down, but I don't. Yesterday, I usually work in the evenings. So yesterday around 10 p.m. I started watching, like, I started watching the third episode or something, and then I watched the whole series throughout the night. And one second, can you hear me? Yeah. So I said I watched the whole series
Yeah,
during the night, and what happened was that I felt like absolute shit after that. Like, my brain was groggy, I couldn't focus, and it's crazy. And then I was thinking about the fact that earlier you had a movie, right? You had the whole format of movies where you would have a 3 hour or 2.5 hour movie, you'd watch it, and you'd make, like, you'd have a good evening, you go back home. With this whole system of web series, there's so much variety because there's no mainstream anymore. It's all like niches. There are all these niche little shows that people can watch, and they've purposely designed those shows so for you to watch back to back. That's how they've
yeah,
designed it. Like, they've assumed it. Like, there are times when you're even watching Mirzapur where you'd watch the ending, and it's not even a cliffhanger. It's just a vague ending. They expect you to click on the next one. They just know it. So then, essentially, what you're doing is you're watching a 10 hour or a 12 hour show. It's not.
yeah.
It's no longer a 12 hour movie. It's no longer a 2.5 hour movie. They've just expanded that by 5 times, and they realize that people can't sit and watch the whole thing. My cousin seen the whole thing.
Hmm.
He's seen that show. My roommate has seen it. I know a couple other people who've seen it. So a lot of people are engaging with this kind of content in this way, where they're consuming it like all together at once. And
I
to
think
be
what
honest,
happens is that
doesn't
people
make
are
you feel
so
good.
afraid. Yeah. I think a lot of people are very afraid to spend time with themselves. Like to truly be alone with your mind is a scary idea for most human beings. And it takes a lot of courage to be like, I'm just gonna sit with whatever it is. I'm uncomfortable, but I'm going to sit with it is a very, very hard thing to say. So people find distractions. That's why Instagram is popular. That's why Facebook is popular. YouTube is popular. Amazon Prime, Netflix. People waste time on this because they do not want to spend time with themselves. It's like almost like being alone is a bad thing. They want to constantly be occupied because we've given so much value to productivity. If I'm not being productive, oh, I haven't, or like, aren't you in on the show? Like, for example, I remember the lockdown, I sort of took my brother's Netflix account and I said, okay, let me see what's the big deal. Let me try. People recommended what's that horrifying show, Black Mirror or something, not Black Mirror. Can't even remember the name of the show because it's so bad. It was horrible, and I just couldn't. I think Black Mirror is the show that was about the future, how the future looks. I think that was not bad.
Dark,
I think I've
I
seen
think you're talking about.
Dark Mirror or something. I don't know. Oh no, there was this one show that I was asked to see.
I think you're talking about Black Mirror. Is it the one with the all of them are dystopian futures? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that was one show which was okay. I think I saw 1 or 2 episodes of it. But there was another show that everybody asked me to watch, which was, I just can't remember. But the perfect description was, it was, somebody said it was like Boom 3. And I was like, yes, this is true.
Uh, Hello, Pavithra, you with us? Yeah, I think every time you Google something, your connection drops out a bit. So I'm just gonna let you know that.
No, I'm not. I was just trying to think of what the show name was. I was trying to find it in my notes, actually.
Oh,
But I was, yeah. But anyway, I can't remember it right now. But it was so bad. I was just like, I don't know why people are binge watching this. It's just crap. I'm
yeah.
like, but then I think I've gotten so used to this idea that you have to watch something. Uh, I'm not saying it has to be meaningful. I don't care what you're watching, but I just feel like you should be mindful for your own self
Mhm.
that you're spending so many hours looking at a screen, and you're spending so many hours consuming something that it's not about adding value. I
But
mean, you
that's the
could be
nature
watching it
of
to be
being
mindful.
hooked to something, right? Like, for example, there have been like months. So I did this diet called the Taoist diet, right? And I was Taoist for the longest time. I wasn't actually Taoist. I was doing the Taoist diet. So I did this thing where basically you're not having oils and you're not mixing certain kinds of foods. It's about food combinations. And I did that diet, and like after a month, I had some oil, and that oil felt like some fried food, and I was like, what am I having? This feels like I'm having like I'm digging something. But if you not consume that content before, or if you not consume that thing in a while, it feels weird to you. It's the same with smoking a cigarette after a couple of months of like not having a cigarette.
Yeah,
Similar with drinking, and even other forms as well. It's just, but then once you get used to it, that's when they kind of hook you in, right? Like even Instagram, right? Like if I were to go to my explore, which I rarely ever do. The only time I go to my explore is when I want to promote, like I want to find hashtags to promote the product, the podcast. But if I go to the explore page, all I'm going to see for some reason is these influencers, right? And they're always half naked. Now the thing is, when I'm looking at that, and if
you could curate that media, by the way.
I
Hmm.
know, I know you could, I know there's something I did in this process that has caused this to happen, but I don't know what
Hmm.
the fuck it is that I've done, right? I like anyway. So this is there always, it's hanging out, and you can curate it absolutely. Like for example, even like simple hashtags for some reason have that stuff come up right at the top. And when I look at it, I'm like, I didn't sign up for this. This is not something that I signed up for. This is not something that I want to watch. Why is this happening to me? Right. But after a point in time, I'll be like, hey, oh, let me see what's going on. Right? And that that point from being repulsed to then it kind of becoming the water that you swim in. It happens a lot. So I think that's how a lot of people get hooked on to stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't, but I think you just need to be more mindful.
Yeah,
I mean, I think I'm
definitely.
very, like I said, like because I'm very attuned to what I'm consuming,
Yeah.
that I'm very conscious about what it is. But I think that's
And I'm
and
guessing
one of the days.
you lead a fulfilling life as well. Like your life to you right now is it fulfills you. I'm guessing to a very
100%.
large extent.
100%.
But
100%.
a lot of people don't have that fulfilling life. Like they want to come home and they want to be mindless for 3 hours. They want to live someone else's life. I'm not saying it's bad or good or whatever. It's fantasy, right?
I understand.
When you go and watch a Netflix show, or when you're watching something on Prime Video or whatever medium you're watching it on, when you're playing a role playing video game, or you're not being yourself for those 3 hours. You're letting your brain go somewhere else. It's not wrong. It's not right. The only problem I think, which I found with this, is when 100% like you're not leading the best life you can. That's one. The second thing is these people know how to take advantage of you when you're in that weak position or weak state. This is your Netflix, your Prime Video. A lot of these outside these conglomerates, these corporate entities know exactly what they have to do when you are making decisions like that. They just want you to keep interacting with their platform, and you will because you're being mindless. Like you're consciously subjecting yourself to that, and it's very hard for people to draw the line. In fact, that's why a lot of
I think so. Yeah, I think that's like I agree with you. It's like drawing the line, which is true. Hmm.
and nobody's taught that level of self control. So what happens also as a result, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's a lot of movements that are happening online on YouTube and all these other spaces where a lot of people actually come together and they are starting movements against this kind of brain capture. They have these things called dopamine detoxes, and there are these.
There's a detox for everything in this world, in my opinion, which just
Yeah,
seems lame.
yeah. No, like in terms of this is basically a set amount of protocols, like kind of like what you're doing, but they're identifying where there are systems of dopamine, like where people can take advantage of that whole dopamine system that you set up, and they're saying, okay, we're going to break that cycle by not interacting with social media, visual images, pornography, different kinds of media, and say, hey, I'm not going to do this because I'm on a dopamine detox. And these kinds of movements have an intense amount of following online. Like even now, if you go like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
even the no fap movement has gone crazy. So
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of people online saying, you know what, we're not going. This is not going to happen. And a lot of people are crazy behind it because of this factor, like the fact that it's like if it's a bunch of people actually taking back their self control from systems which were designed to have you lose your self control, right? It's pretty fascinating to see for sure.
Yeah.
And sounds good. Is how do people reach you if someone wants to reach out to you? How can we reach out to you?
You can sort of follow me on Instagram. My handle is my name, which is Pavithra Dikshit. I'm very non-creative like that. Or you could like follow my work there. You could
Yeah.
also sort of check out my website, which is pavithradikshit.com. I think those are probably the easiest ways to find me. LinkedIn is another option if you would like. I don't really actually use anything else, so it'd be really hard to find me anywhere else.
Sounds good. Yeah. Thank you so much, Pavitra. I appreciate you taking the
Thank you
time out
so
for
much,
this.
Shivam. Yeah,
I
thank
was
you.
going
It
to
was
stop.
lovely. I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.